And we're live. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Solvable Mysteries podcast. My name is Yuras. I'm joined by Glenn Highcove. It's a late evening in California. How are you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing okay. I'm staying busy and I am all revved up to talk about this episode. And it's interesting because let me just give a brief little slap patting ourselves on our backs. This was something that we'd had a hint, even like what was it last year,
Yeah.
that there was going to be something moving on this. So this is actually kind of overdue from our expectations for when things were going to start moving on this case.
Yeah, exactly. Before we jump to the episode, I would like to ask everyone who enjoys our content to leave a like on this, episode. If you're listening to this on the YouTube, just for the algorithm, we want to see if it's actually gonna, boost our exposure, I would say. And also, I would like to shout out to a certain wuss from Thailand right now, or at least that person is living in Thailand. So, hope everyone's having a good day, and let's jump right into the topic. So today we're going to be talking about the Kristin Smart's disappearance, and we alluded last week that this case is breaking, and yeah, actually, like literally 1 hour before we began this recording, I was actually sifting through Twitter and through the Google News alerts and things like that. And, like literally articles about Kristen's disappearance are coming out like as we speak. Like, I think one came like literally 30 minutes ago. So there's a lot to discuss here. As Glenn said, we did talk about this case on episode number 27. That was a good year ago, and it was a shorter episode, but I think we gave a description of the case and the events. I do want to go quickly over the case once again because I'm certain not everyone is aware of what happened, but it's not going to be a super detailed, I would say, intro into the actual story. I'm looking at the timeline. I would just want to quickly introduce people to Kristen Smart for everyone who has no idea who she was. So she was a student at Cal Poly, California Polytechnical Institute, and she had disappeared under very suspicious circumstances. And we do have one person who we believe, at least I would personally be leaning towards, that he probably had something to do with her disappearance. That would be Paul Flores. We will be getting into his story as well. So Kristen actually disappears, I believe, on May 25th. In the early morning hours. She was last May 25th of 1996. So, she has been missing for very many years at this point. And she was last seen around 2 a.m. Now, she was, and if we could quickly jump to the Google Earth here, the evening, it was a Friday evening, the 24th was the Friday evening, and Kristen went out with a few friends, apparently from, a really interesting podcast called Your Own Backyard, hosted by Chris Lampert, that, everyone should definitely check that podcast out. It's fantastic. The production quality is next level. She actually went to a party on the 135th Crandall Way. And she was acting a little bit weird in that party. We may address this fact a little bit later on. Now, she was at 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. ish. She was actually spotted passed out on the front lawn of one of these, I guess, lawns and things like that. And she was actually walked back to her dorm initially by three people. One of them was actually Paul Flores himself, and one by one, out of those three people accompanying her towards her hall in Muir Hall, because she was staying here, she was actually left alone with Paul Flores, because the last person split up from Paul and Kristen at this intersection right here. Now, Paul has switched his story on multiple occasions. This man, Paul Flores, essentially said that he just split up with her shortly. I think around this particular intersection, and apparently his initial story was that he saw Kristin walk on her own towards Muir Hall while he went to Santa Lucia Hall. Later on, he said that he did in fact walk her back home to Muir Hall and things like that. Now, I think a lot of people already know about this case, so let's not sugarcoat it. A lot of people believe that actually Paul took Kristin to Santa Lucia Hall, where he most likely, at least according to a lot of people, as well as the investigation believes this, raped and killed her. Later on in the evening, somehow most likely contacted his father or mother or both of them. The father is Ruben Flores. He's also booked right now and is has just got denied bail, if I'm not mistaken, because this is literally happening as we speak. And the last thing I want to mention is that the following day, Paul Flores was actually playing basketball with a friend, and that friend said that Paul has a black eye and scratch marks. Now, a lot of people believe that he purposely scheduled that basketball game so that later on, when he is questioned by police, and when the police obviously ask him about the black eye, he would have sort of an explanation how he got the black eye, and he said that he got it from that basketball game. However, when that person who played basketball with Paul was questioned, he said that Paul had that black eye previously, even before they started the game, and then Paul Flores once again flip flopped and said that he actually got that black eye while he was fixing his car, and a lot of other details we will be discussing today. Glenn, I'm sure you want to address something
Yeah,
here, so have
let
at
me
it.
jump in just even before I get into the little tiny preamble I was going to do. I think actually, because I know sometimes people zing us in the comments if we get something wrong. I believe actually his Ruben, so that's Paul's father, who is now an elderly man. I believe he actually did get released on bail. So he had, I think before it was going to be like $250,000 bail, and they got that reduced down to 50,000. And apparently he's in bad health. Like they don't really, unlike Paul, they don't really think that he's going to try to like lam it, go on the lam and leave the
Okay,
state.
yeah.
So I think they're less worried about. I mean, he's obviously facing some pretty serious charges himself, but they're more worried about who they think is the main culprit here. Um, so let me take a step back here. This case, it is interesting because when you and I covered it, it was a case that was, like you said, it was honestly a pretty famous case that had kind of died away. And then this podcaster that you mentioned, um, single-handedly, I mean, though there were other people we'll mention who have been involved in this case and working with the family and trying to bring attention. But this one podcaster, I think, is the person that kind of focused a laser light on this case and brought it back from the dead, really, because it was basically a cold case or a dead case. There wasn't really much action going on. There was a little bit of investigation, like we talked about in our original show, but when we did our show, um, gosh, I mean, I want to say it was like more than a year ago now. It's kind of crazy to think how time flies. We actually thought that like what was happening now was going to happen then. Like the Smart family had actually told people that the FBI had told them to get ready for movement on the case. So like you and I, we were like, okay, we're going to do our initial case on this, and then like the other shoe's going to drop, and then we're going to do the rest of it, and then nothing happened for like a year.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was like, but meanwhile, this other guy, he was chugging along with his podcast. His podcast is pretty much just about this thing, and it's interesting because it's now like the number one podcast on Apple. I think, right? Like it's obviously for obvious reasons it's trended big, and the guy, I mean, he's not doing it to get rich. Like the guy is a genuinely good guy when you read about him. In fact, this isn't even what he wants to do for a living. Like he has a whole other career that is really his true love. So this was really just kind of like a side hobby that became a kind of like a benevolent obsession that became productive. And we can only hope that someday we might be able to have that impact. Maybe we can become uh, his version for like the what's his name, Michael Negrete case or something. Maybe that'll be you and me. We'll figure out where poor Michael Negrete is, or some case like that. We can only hope.
I'd
Aspire
love
to
that.
that.
I just want to add.
Yeah,
I just want to add
to
that
the height.
I would love that. You know what I mean? If you could just like solely focus on. Maybe I had like an idea. Maybe it would be like a side show a little bit. It wouldn't be like on a, you know,
The main focus.
yeah,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be like a main focus for the show. Maybe like I don't know, like it wouldn't even have a regular schedule. Just once we may end up digging up something, for you. I mean, that would be a really interesting project, and I really do feel like, I would like to do something as like Chris Lampert did as well, because that guy is truly amazing, man.
Yeah, it really returned. I mean, it returned value in a lot of ways, but especially to the family, who is getting. I think they see some justice finally. So, let me put on top of this, just to be responsible to you and me and to everybody else. I'm going to put a quick disclaimer. Not that we should have to do this, but of course, everything we say here is, of course, our own opinion. This is an ongoing case that's in the court of law. No one's been convicted yet. They haven't even really told us what the full evidence is. Um, and I'm saying this because the Flores family has been harassed in the past, apparently, and has become litigious about it. And just to be fair to them, for as fair as you want to be to them, I would please ask nobody, when you listen to this or any other show or other podcast or read things in the news, don't get mad. People would get mad, but don't do anything. And for sure, don't do anything that might interfere with an active case. Like if you know something and for some reason you waited all the way until this moment listening to our show to tell that little jewel of a secret that'll crack the case to the cops, well, yeah, like call the San Luis Obispo police and let them know what's going on, or the FBI. They'll be interested. But otherwise, I would really ask anybody that's listening to this, like, be an observer. Don't get involved. Don't harass anybody. This is not about vigilantism at this point. This case is finally getting movement. So for
Exactly.
sure, nobody wants to jeopardize this. Okay, so it's interesting when you review this, and especially I think, strangely enough, even though I'd kind of watched a lot of stuff about this, and in fact, Dr. Grande had covered the case 2 months ago, so I rewatched his show. I've been going through the news stories, but today, as we go along, there was one news story I found, and it's actually from the Mercury News. So it's from a kind of a local newspaper in the area, Northern California. Um, and this one story, I think, did the best job of cobbling together all these little, let's say, facets of information, like little pieces of information here and there, and recapping the case and really making the case for not only kind of how obviously involved and probably culpable Paul Flores was, and that's my opinion, and maybe your S's as well. Um, but I think really having you understand like what a miscarriage of justice this was until then. So
Exactly.
it wasn't,
Just to
yeah,
quickly add, I will be adding it to the visual assets for everyone who wants to see that article. We will be showing it, I think, for some amount of time during the show live for you guys, because Glenn did send me to it and I did read it. And actually, I think we should actually include it in the description as well of this episode for
yeah,
people
yeah,
to
the show
really,
notes.
yeah, we should definitely do that later on, because guys, this literally explains pretty much everything you need to know in regards to this case.
It is really an outstanding piece of journalism. Of course, it has its own slant. It's not it's not neutral. And I think I want to kind of, like, because we've already done a show on the basic facts of the case in detail. What I'm going to really try to do is avoid rehashing that as much as possible. But when we do talk about things that we've talked about on the previous episode or that are about the case, it really is going to be in light of making the case that the state is making at this point for Paul Flores' involvement. So, what we're going to talk about here are going to be specific touch points um, that involved Paul Flores and maybe his extended family. And then there were some very interesting pieces of media that have come up in the past couple months, including an interview, like a 30-minute interview with Paul's mother at the very house that later was, searched in detail in front of the very deck, I believe, that was
Wow.
searched under. Yeah, I mean, and then, and you know what? I'll just, let me just not even tease it that much. I'm not super happy with his mom either. Like, I'm going to make a comparison of her to someone else, like another kind of mother or wife that was involved in another infamous case here in the U.S. And kind of got that feeling a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see kind of how everybody feels. Especially, I think that's another good one to leave links to
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
show notes because
That's.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a heck of an interview. So okay, so yeah, let's just rewind for a second. Talk about Kristin. So Kristin, college student. This is 1996. So gosh, I mean, she was basically my age. Or my generation. She's at San Luis Obispo. The more extended part story I've heard was that she's kind of looking to go to a party. So she goes to the first party, and it wasn't really kind of, I guess, what she was looking for. To be honest, and I'm going to be very clear here, that when we talk about her behavior, it's not victim blaming. Sometimes especially when I talk about things that were unfortunate, it's almost like, let's suppose you saw somebody who was about to walk into a big field that you knew there were like rattlesnakes or lions in or something, right? They didn't know, right? So they were just being a normal person expecting to do normal things, but they didn't know kind of the dangers that awaited. So that's kind of sometimes when I see her how what happened to her that night. I think that she went out expecting that, like a normal human being, albeit drinking underage, whatever. I mean, all college students do that. But like I don't think she realized the kind of predators that were out there. And unfortunately, it was like that predator was out there looking for somebody
Could I
just like
just,
her.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really sorry for interrupting, but I just want to add a few details because I don't think I will get a chance later on. So first of all, we're looking at the house where Kristen was actually partying at, and just a quick few details that I've did manage to learn from Chris's Lambert's podcast. Well, apparently there was only about 20 people in this house. So essentially, when I was listening to his podcast, I imagined the house where the initial party took place to be a lot bigger than this, but this doesn't look like a really big house. And for 20 people partying in there, and all sorts of interesting things happening, like allegedly Paul Flores being on top of Kristin at some points after like she fell down the stairs, and then a whole bunch of situations where Kristin was in a bathroom. Got like some dude in a bathroom, then apparently that dude thought that she was only making the other guys in the party jealous so that they would go talk to Kristen, because they referred to Kristen as vinyl chick because she was wearing vinyl. And apparently she was as you've said, Glenn, she was really I think not necessarily super aware of the potential dangers, because apparently this one guy walks into the party and Kristen immediately goes up to him and kisses him like on the mouth and things like that. So apparently that's what happened. So yeah, take it away, man.
Yeah, I mean, like I think this is one of those things where it's unfortunate because of how she acted when she was inebriated. And once again, this isn't victim blaming because I mean, even in a court of law, when sometimes when you're under like a certain mental state because of a drug you took, and alcohol is a drug. I mean, it's not an illegal drug, though for her age it was. But yeah, I mean, obviously we all know people act differently under alcohol, and sometimes they can even interact with medications and stuff. I'll just say this: I have been in situations with people. Um, like in other places I've lived or in college, where I've seen people lose their friggin' minds on alcohol. Like they were totally different people, did things that they would have never done. So okay, yeah. So what happened was, Kristen was looking for kind of a different kind of party scene, and the friend that she was with, that I guess they'd gone to the birthday party with originally, was not into it. And I think this was the first unfortunate turn of events that she didn't really have backup, and I don't know that she knew. It's very unfortunate that like anybody should need backup to go wander around and party, but I think especially
Yeah, dude.
she ended up a lot more vulnerable, I guess.
One second,
Yeah,
just really quickly. Once again, I apologize for the interruption, but just to clarify the information for our audience, they actually did went to a party before the party that we are looking at
yeah,
right now. So it was apparently only a few people appear, and they were like there were like two dudes. To what I'm aware, and they were playing video games. And then Kristen said that this party is a dud. This is her exact quote. And Kristen and this other friend that she was with left that lame party, and Kristen still wanted to party, but this other friend didn't. So they split up, and that's how Kristen ended up at this interesting party in this small little house.
yeah. I mean, it was a mismatch in a lot of ways, I guess, and I understand that. Like, I know there's a part of me that always feels like I never really got to party like I really wanted to in college. And I think there's expectations people have for different parts of the U.S. or for different colleges for what like kind of party they would like to go to. So, but on the other hand, a really quiet person for sure wouldn't be down with that. So yeah, a frat party would definitely be. Which is what she ended up going to. She went to the part of the area that was known for frat houses and frat parties and people that belonged to fraternities and sororities. Well, that would match it. So okay, yeah, like you said, I'm just let me speed through this a little bit. She ends up at this party and she's almost immediately very inebriated. It may have been that she didn't have a high tolerance. It may have been that she was potentially drugged with something, which is one of the theories. But yeah, she's definitely acting in a way that doesn't sound characteristic of her normally, and unfortunately, it sounds like she was getting more and more at risk. Now, what's interesting is this will actually come into play later in the investigation, where it seems like the police, strangely, as Dr. Grande pointed out, the police almost didn't take this seriously because they were like victim blaming. They were like, oh, well, she was acting like promiscuous and, all drunk and was underage. So we don't need to investigate anything. And it was like this weird contradiction of like the police not taking this case seriously during very crucial moments because of almost some kind of prejudice they had against someone who, if anything, was showing that she was especially a victim, right? I mean, especially when in a condition
Yes,
where,
yes.
yeah. So it was very strange. It almost, I guess this is one of those things where you really kind of, it's so strange that people that know me would not think that I would be one to criticize the police. But I mean, the more and more when you and I do this show, I keep on seeing these like, come on, man moments where it's like, come on, like,
In
what's
this
your job? You guys,
case, in this case
yeah.
especially, man, this case, it seems like they botched literally everything.
Like it's like that there's a Reddit there's a subreddit called you had one job, and this is like one of those where it's like you had one job, which was to
Yeah,
enforce the law and investigate, and you guys didn't do it. So yeah, all right, so she's at this party, and then yeah, Paul, who interestingly already had a very negative reputation from, I guess, coming out of high school and in college as being, look, I'll just say it as being I almost wonder if he had some kind of mental issue or some kind of like spectrum disorder on top of just, like it's not super unusual for, I don't want to use the words toxic masculinity, but then maybe if there ever was an example of that, this would be that, where it's just somebody who doesn't know how to, let's say, engage um, other people, in this case the opposite sex per his tastes, appropriately to initiate a relationship. Someone that seems to think, I don't know if he never was socialized right by his family or by his peers, or he's getting this from the media, or where it's coming from. But he had these nicknames like Chester the Molester, which is like, you don't want to have that nickname. Um,
yeah.
or was it like Scary Paul, and just, I mean, he had like multiple nicknames that all alluded to the fact that he did not only did he not know how to talk to women, but he was coming off. I mean, there were like specific adjectives Dr. Grande used, but I mean, specifically like aggressive,
Yeah.
um, inappropriate. So he was known after this event to hit on women in front of their boyfriends. Oh, that's, I mean, that is not just inappropriate; it's stupid. It's like hazardous to your own health. Why would you do that? But to me, it sounds like the description of somebody who is socially, not just socially like a disaster, but potentially like on
Yeah,
that
yeah.
arc, you know what I mean? Like this is like potentially becoming like a sexual predator, and it turns out in the aftermath there were some other accusations. So yeah, anyway, unfortunately, this is the guy that kind of hones in on her like a lion would hone in on a like a gazelle that was at the edge of the herd, right?
Yeah.
That was just like not feeling good, or off their game that day. And like you said, he's just doing like the creepo playbook. He's like, taking advantage of a drunk person. He's laying on top of her in the hallway. I mean,
Well, just to quickly
yeah,
add some
yeah,
information, from what I've gathered, the hallway incident isn't verified. Like, it's not completely verified. Apparently,
okay,
some people
yeah,
noticed that some people saw, because there were 20 people and not everyone wants to talk from that party. I think only one person was really actively telling his story. It was the same guy who Kristin immediately kissed after he entered the party, and apparently he did saw him laying on top of her. But I think the real creepiness began. I'm sure you will agree. Right after Kristen was, at
yeah.
least they said that she was laying. This was after midnight, like 1 a.m. or like 2 a.m., something like that. Close to 2 a.m. She was laying passed out in the on the other side of the street. So I'm assuming most likely somewhere here, I would probably guess, or here, or maybe here. And that's when two other people decided to help her out, go back to her dorm, which is the, let's see here, Muir Hall, right? But then Paul tags along, and then things start happening.
Yeah, it's almost, and the way it was described was almost like he was looking for this exact situation. Like he was sort of waiting almost for
Yeah.
for help, or to like kind of intervene and insert himself in there. So yeah, I'll just speed through this. So yeah, they go and they kind of, I can only imagine how hard it is to get somebody. And she wasn't small. She was, I think, a rather tall. I don't know how high.
6'1".
What 6'1"? Wow. Okay, so somebody an inch shorter than me. Um,
And I want to
that is
add,
not. Yeah.
add that Paul was actually 5'10". So let's address the fact that Kristen was at least not necessarily bigger, but definitely taller than Paul.
And she was, I think she was a lifeguard. Is that right? Because
Yes.
that becomes, yeah. So and so that's somebody in super good shape. So that's somebody with some good amount of muscle mass. So I'm guessing she weighed, 170, 180. You know,
Yeah.
the pounds. What is that in kilos? Like probably,
Uh,
I don't know, 90,
60. No,
80.
no,
Yeah,
no, man.
70.
No, no,
Sorry,
no.
70 kilos or something.
Yeah, definitely
70,
not
80
90,
kilos.
man. Definitely not 90.
No, not 90. Sorry. It's like 2.5 pounds per
Yeah.
kilo or something. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't know, 70, 80 kilos, something like that. Not small. So yeah, I can imagine. So it takes three people to move her down towards, her dorm, and then people start dropping off. So first, I think, what was it? The guy that was with
Yes.
them,
Yeah.
he has to bail. He's like had enough, and it's once again, I mean, obviously, it's like someone else isn't necessarily a responsibility, but it's really too bad. In
Yeah.
retrospect, I'm sure that person felt bad. Um, so then it's just Paul and this other girl. I believe her name is Anderson. Her last name is Anderson. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes.
Yes. So they're going, and like, I mean, this was the big red flag, was that like he's like, oh, don't worry, I live right by her. I know where she is. I'll take her the rest of the way. And then he tries to like kiss, supposedly, allegedly, he tries to kiss that other girl, which like it's not like
Yeah.
I mean, these are like big glaring red flags, and
He
like,
he
yeah.
apparently asked for a goodnight kiss, and
Ugh.
she was like, "No, Paul, I don't want to do that." And he was like allegedly insistent, you know?
Yeah, I mean, these are like big warning, like rapist kind of warning flags going off. I'm not saying somebody always is when they do this, but this is not a good sign, and that's not a sign of somebody that understands like how this works. And also, I'm sure he had some drinks in him too, so his inhibitions were not inhibited.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. Okay, so yeah, so then that is literally the last time that anyone else ever sees Kristen Smart alive. So, okay, like in the last episode, we talked about how what happens is, like she kind of disappears. I think her family, I can't remember the exact timing, is would be much better for someone to listen to our original episode. But, almost immediately, people realize that she's not where she's supposed to be, which is her dorm. While meanwhile, the police kind of tried to blow it off like, oh, well, it was Memorial Day weekend. It was, and that people were often gone and sort of straggle late back to their dorms after a big holiday weekend, maybe because of partying and things like that. But that was not like what everyone else anticipated. Now, in parallel with this, from what we understand now, from I think it was the other podcast, um, one of the coworkers of Paul's mother alleges that at some point his mom had said that his dad got a phone call and had to go rushing off somewhere in the middle of
Yeah,
that night.
exactly.
Yeah, um, and then all of a sudden, they're laying a fresh layer of concrete
Yep.
over the backyard. Yeah, yeah,
Just a
yeah.
quickly want to add some information, and we could jump to another area in the Google Earth here. So we have two areas marked in this other little area of California, I guess. So this is the 710 White CT, whatever. So this is the Flores' home. I think this was their main home, but let's remember the fact that Susan Flores as well as Ruben Flores, they had sort of split up at that point already. So actually, the Flores owned two homes in this neighborhood. So this was the home where Ruben Flores was living. And actually, fun fact, I just want to quickly jump to this. We could actually see that Ruben Flores himself makes an appearance, and this was verified by Chris Lambert. He said on his podcast that this is actually Ruben Flores, you know what I mean? And on his particular experience driving past this house, he also saw Ruben Flores, and he said that he saw him in literally the same position, just looking at people. So if obviously Ruben right now is in jail, but just a good like couple of months ago, you could probably drive through here and you would find Ruben Flores just staring at you. So that's definitely a creepy sight. But they have another house, and this is the house in question. It's on the 529 E Branch Street. This is it. This is where apparently, they started laying some concrete, man. You want to take it away?
Yeah, and I mean, by the way, can't help but wonder if Ruben was just counting the days of freedom. Oh, another day outside, not in a cage for something I did. I don't know. You
Allegedly,
never
you know
know,
what I
right?
mean?
Yeah, allegedly, yeah, yeah. I mean, but maybe all of us should count our days, right? Every day above ground is a good day, but
Yeah.
maybe especially for him. So yeah, they this so just here's the thing. There's all these like friggin' coincidences that when you add them up are just so damning and so obvious, and it really makes you wonder like what kind of, at least in 1996, what kind of like strange circus act the police were running there for investigations. Maybe they just thought their job was to break up like fights at bars, and like bring drunk college students into the drunk tank to dry out and not actually investigate murders. So,
Yeah.
and disappearances. So yeah, yeah. So it's interesting is this house, the same house where this double layer of concrete is laid, and if you listen to our other episode or read the story in the meantime, like there is some amount of questioning that's going on of Paul Flores, but unfortunately, in parallel to this. The school Memorial Day weekend is right before the end of school. So by the time they go to search, um, Paul's dorm room and Kristen's dorm room. Oh well, they didn't even put a freeze in the rooms. The rooms have been cleaned by the housekeeping staff at the college. I mean, I'll tell you, living at UCLA, we had housekeeping staff that came in every week. Just as part of the what you were paying for to help kind of tidy up the place and make sure you weren't, seriously degrading the dorm. And of course, afterwards they do a more thorough job of cleaning between residents. So, well, why is this significant? Well, it kind of seems like maybe somebody who touched a cadaver also touched his bed, because there was a cadaver dog that actually made like a beeline right to his bed, and also there was a dog that just honing off her scent,
Yeah.
like whether or not it was a cadaver,
Could I
also made a beeline to that bed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
could I quickly jump to one visual asset that I have here? We'll get to
yeah.
these a little bit later on. This is the Santa Lucia Hall dormitory. Let me make it a little bit bigger for everyone. Okay, so this is the proposed, I guess, route that Paul took with, allegedly, if he did kill Kristin Smart, that he allegedly took this route. Now, he apparently would have to enter the Santa Lucia Hall dormitory through this uh line, and as you can see, like, there's a lot of rooms here, so it's pretty strange to me how he would really just nonchalantly just walk Kristen to his room, which was 128 right here, which sort of, and I want to ask you a question really quickly here, dude. Do you think that initially, allegedly, if Paul did end up killing Kristen, do you think that he only had intentions of potentially sexually assaulting her, allegedly, if he did that, without actually having any intentions of killing her, but maybe she hit him in the head with an elbow or something like that, gave him a black eye, and then he somehow managed to kill her? And what I'm trying to say here is, it doesn't look to me like a plan to kill someone. It looks like a plan to sexually abuse someone, and then that plan goes terribly wrong and you end up killing someone. Wouldn't you say that that's how it's looking right now?
You know, yeah, yes and no. So I think yes, I think because like to your point, he doesn't seem that planned out. But this isn't. I kind of the reason why I'm saying this, I'm kind of straddling the fence is,
Yeah.
I watched actually a good clip from Rogan recently where he was interviewing. I think it was a famous like Greco-Roman wrestler. You know what I mean? So like an Olympic
Of
type
course,
wrestler,
of
not a
course.
yeah. So this guy was talking about this guy is some famous wrestler, and actually famously his sister was killed by like a friend of his or like an acquaintance. So this is really
Whoa.
crazy. But like this guy had said, just like Paul, had said some like really creepo level stuff and acted, and he kind of just shrugged it off and said, "Oh well, like guys. I mean, guys say stupid stuff for sure. I mean, we've all put our foot in our mouth, but I don't know. It was something that like what happened was his sister suddenly like didn't show up to this family event that they were having, and then they it was very unusual to the point where they sent somebody over to the house. Anyway, long story short, this guy's friend actually had broken into the house and killed his sister after sexually
Whoa.
assaulting her. Okay, so you say, okay, well, Glenn, so what? What does that mean? Maybe that guy was just like, what Paul Flores is being accused of, that maybe it was like a spur of the moment thing.
Yeah.
And that guy apparently, even though the guy was really angry, it was strangely enough, even though the guy basically admitted to doing it,
Yeah.
the guy was super mad at like the wrestler's family for a long time and like threatened them. And anyway, what happened was the guy never got out of jail. He died in jail. But apparently the warden called the wrestler and said that before he died, the guy had actually like kind of turned around his thing, and he said, "You know what? I was gonna do that. I was gonna do that to somebody." Like he wanted to do it to
Oh,
somebody.
okay.
So
Okay.
that's interesting. But so when I kind of look at like the way Paul was being so allegedly aggressive, and these, not just this, but some other
Yes.
things that finally came to light, I can't help but think that like he was trying so hard to make something like this happen that you got to makes you wonder if at least
But
subconsciously,
exactly. But
yeah,
just to quickly stop here for one more moment. So, if this is the proposed route, he would have to carry a really drunk and intoxicated Kristen Smart towards his room, which was 1208. And then, if he did pre-plan the kill, would have to somehow kill her there. I mean, you. I mean, it's
it's stupid.
it's
Yeah.
definitely stupid. Like, if you're gonna do that, there's probably better ways of doing that. As horrid as that sounds. Now, he apparently took her out from this route. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say here.
I mean, I'll say you're right. I mean, from what I can tell about his life trajectory after this, it doesn't seem like he was a smart man.
Yeah, oh,
It
yeah,
sounds
for
like
sure,
you,
for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So you may have just been kind of like a kind of stupid caveman of a person,
yeah.
um, and maybe that's kind of explains some of this. Like you said, yeah, like you said, you would think someone who was more devious would actually do more devious levels of planning, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, yeah, this guy just seems to have just done what kind of a basic criminal would do who wasn't going to college. But you don't necessarily have to be smart to go to college.
Just one last step in. So on the Google Earth, we're now seeing that he would probably have to carry her out of here, like the dead body already. And he was apparently seen walking around with, like, trash bins, something like that,
Yeah,
like in the morning hours.
yeah.
But
He was
man,
seen pushing like a cart with like a metal bin in it.
Jesus
And it was,
Christ.
and oh, and by the way, okay, so just tying this in, like I said, I want to apologize to everybody where this is kind of ramshackle, but it's that kind of thing where we're really trying to connect a lot of different dots without,
Yeah,
without reinventing the wheel and telling the story, so that like this is where this it's probably, it may even benefit you at some point to pause us, open up another browser tab or something, like watch Dr. Grande's thing and then come back to it
read
so
the
you can hear our
article.
opinion. Yeah, read the article. Like I think that's where you're going to get the best. Is this is kind of like a director's cut commentary kind of thing on like the meta of this case, right? Because there's lots of coverage in this case, but you listen to us, obviously you watch our show because you like to hear our opinions and we'd like to hear your opinions. So this is where I think we get the synthesis. So yeah, I mean, the case in point, this bin seems to strangely match a metal bin that was on that very property we talked about, the Arroyo Grande property, the same one that had the mysterious layer of concrete suddenly laid on it. And by the way, one of these interviews we're going to show, or we're going to allude to, mentioned the interview with his mother. She's in front of, I think, what is the same deck, and like the house. Okay, to be fair, the house itself looked like it was in good shape. Like maybe it was the kind of house that they had worked on, but the deck was in terrible shape. Like it wasn't painted. Looked like that thing would fall down if you sneezed on it. Like it didn't really look like it was something that normally they cared a lot about. You know what I mean? So even though the walls and the windows and everything looked like they were in relatively good shape or been redone,
Yeah.
like it didn't. I'm just saying, like it didn't seem like they were all into like do it yourself. So that's why. So here's the other thing, and I think this is the most damning part of all of this. Before we get into probably some of the other um, interesting things that have come out. I know. I think this will help kind of stick a pin or stick a fork in this part of the episode. Is this very house inexplicably was rented to somebody who was not from the Flores family. So um, this other woman, um, she well, actually, it was a woman, and I think it was her husband. They rent the house for a while. They're renters of this house.
Yeah.
They had no idea what was going on with this case, or that the family they were renting this house from was connected at all potentially to this disappearance. So the new landlady is Susan,
Yes.
Paul's mother. So they what was weird was these people, they're renting it, and
They started getting letters. Initially, like, the interesting part for me was that they started getting letters, and I believe when they still hadn't had connected the dots that, this is the house that belongs to the mother of Paul Flores, who a lot of people believe is responsible for the disappearance of Kristin Smart. They started getting like some sort of letters, of like, and the contents of those letters were like, uh, please tell your son to cooperate or something like that. And I believe they had a son, this couple that was renting this house, they also had like a son who was 6. So I think they quickly realized that these letters are not referring to their 6-year-old child, but to Paul Flores. And actually they then find out about like the whole situation. And I'm sure you want to discuss this interesting fact, because for me personally, the most like creepy and bizarre thing, sure, we'll jump to the alleged earring in a second, but I will say the more seriously sinister thing for me was the alarm clock that was going off at 4:20 a.m. in the morning.
yeah,
Dude, you wanna
that
you wanna
I,
yeah.
it's like something out of a horror movie, right? Or like a Kubrick film or something. Like
Jesus.
it's like, okay, so let's remember Kristen was a lifeguard, and for her lifeguard job, she needed to be at her job for whatever reason at 5 in the morning. Apparently,
Yeah.
I wish I
Yes.
dug a little more into that, but yeah, wherever her job was, she needed to be there at 5 in the morning. So, what would be like a good time if you need to like get dressed and eat breakfast and take a shower and do your morning business?
Four twenty.
Maybe 4:20 a.m. would be
Yeah.
like kind of a good time. It gives you like 40 minutes to get your clothes on and get out of there and commute. Oh, well, so this lady, on top of like all the other stuff we're about to mention, she's in her house and the brand new concrete, in some places you wouldn't even necessarily put concrete in the yard. Um, right by her window every morning for like a couple of months. She keeps on getting this weird, like there's this like sound that's coming from under the concrete. There's this like a wristwatch alarm is like going off, and she's like, well, why would every I mean she can't like ignore it because it's waking her up, like she's hearing it through in her bedroom, like which is on the same side as that deck by the concrete,
Yeah.
presumably. She's hearing this like wristwatch noise at 4:20 for like months, and then finally, just like a lot of those wristwatches, if it was a wristwatch. A lot of them, the battery can last 1 or 2 years. I mean, I think I have a wristwatch from like 3 years ago that still works.
Yeah.
Um, so like depending on how you use it, oh yeah, it goes off. Eventually it kind of fades away and doesn't go anywhere. It says here in the story, it went for weeks or up to a month, and then this is when they start kind of putting two and two together, and they recall some other things like they found what was it, blood spatters.
I wanna,
Hit,
yeah,
yeah.
because I had marked this particular thing as of very interesting to me. So basically, both of these people who were renting out the place, right? They were working in the hospital, so they know what blood is and how dry the blood looks in particular. So they apparently found the dried blood in the bathroom, which is crazy. And I feel like, how the hell did that never come up? Like, and how would I mean, probably it was really small specks of blood. But before that, before we jump to the earring and the other details, I want to ask you a question. Right now, I have opened up like a screenshot, a satellite screenshot that I took from the house. The house is 529, as we can see, on Branch Street. There is virtually no backyard. So for me personally, it's like, where are you laying the concrete? So I definitely don't think it's in the front, like front few steps of the lawn, which is basically non-existent and it's covered with trees. And the driveway, I don't think it was the driveway. So apparently the only place where this could have been happening was this particular area. So that's a small area, man.
Yeah, and when I was looking at the interview with his mother, uh, it kind of looks like it could be there. Like wherever it was there was kind of like a drop off behind her. There was like a raised deck with like a big like a side of a house.
Yeah.
Didn't to your point, it didn't really look like the front of the house. So maybe that exactly matches. What you can't tell here is, I think this is on a hill. This house.
Let's
Like if
see.
I think there may be some contour.
Yes, definitely,
Yeah, there was
definitely.
whatever it was. There was like a view behind her, kind of. There was like kind of a view of like a hillside and stuff. Yeah, and it may have been that they went in the backyard. Now, okay, here's something that's important to note is these accusations about her potentially being buried like in this yard or another yard or multiple yards. This is not like a new thing that's just coming to light. So when all this started happening, when they found, like I said, the blood in the bathroom, they found some other things that were disturbing. There was this metal trash can that in the yard that for some reason Ruben, Paul's father, was like obsessed with, which is really weird and seems to look a lot like that same trash can that he was strangely, like you said, that Paul was pushing around the campus that day. Because when you and I did the episode, I don't think we knew that fact yet,
Yeah.
and we that I think it hadn't really come to light, and we were like yeah, what were we were trying to puzzle about the logistics. We were like, how would you even if you had somebody help you, like how would you get a body into a car without anybody seeing you, and could you even do it by yourself? Because like I mean, how do you move someone that's bigger than you are? um it's really hard. So there's that going up. But okay, look, the police, to their credit, or maybe not, had actually used allegedly, or well, I say allegedly because I don't know how well they used it. Apparently, they had used ground penetrating radar because it is like when in the interview with Susan, she mentioned that like sometimes they didn't dig up the yard because they refused to like kind of pay them for the damages and for some other stuff because it's like it's like a construction project, right? So if you're
Yes.
going to do a construction project to someone's property and then you don't find anything, maybe they come back and sue you. And I think it's unfortunate that they didn't maybe wage that battle a little harder. But supposedly, like to kind of like find the middle point between doing nothing and doing the most invasive process, they use ground penetrating radar. Now, I don't know that ground penetrating radar was very accurate at all in the 90s. Um,
Exactly.
it's
But
better now. There's a lot more computing. Yeah.
exactly. Just a quick step in because I think a lot of people are having the same question as I am having right now, and I feel like we need to address this fact before we move further into the story, right? Um, why? Let's say, okay, let's say Paul, let's say this had happened. I'm not saying it happened. Let's say that it happened. Paul kills Kristin, okay, calls the father, Ruben, I killed this college girl. I need to dispose her body. Come help me out. Ruben comes over. They dispose of her body somehow. Okay, why are they disposing the body in their own backyard of a house that's been put up for rent for like a lot of time already, and they knew it was gonna get rented out eventually? Why not? Literally, California is a massive place. You could have someone disappear like literally anywhere. Why would you bring? And apparently, from what we can tell, she was in the bathroom. Apparently, if that was the case, because dried blood was found, or maybe it was them cleaning off blood of Kristen, whatever. And then also, why not remove the wristwatch? And why do concrete? Wouldn't you just try to, I don't know, cut the body into pieces and put it in bags and I don't know, bury them somewhere in the desert? Why is everything happening in this super congested small little backyard where literally you have windows from at least four different households having a perfect view of what you're doing? How is this even feasible?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it seems super stupid, right?
You're
Did you
retarded.
now the one? Yeah, I mean, literally, right? It seems like really, literally the intellect had been somehow like
Yes.
I can't help but speculate, especially given I don't know. We'll get into Susan's interview in a bit about how like there was some interesting stuff about even how she was in her interview
Yeah.
that makes you wonder if there's anything slowing down their intellects, but. And if I sound like I'm being extra not charitable, well, yeah, I'm for sure. Like I don't really like them, so like I don't really like what I perceive they may have gotten away with, and I don't really like their attitude towards like what's happened so far. But especially because it seems like what happened was maybe they panicked. So that's what it, just to answer your question.
Okay.
Maybe that's what it was. This isn't like the age of like OJ DNA evidence where like a big part of the OJ case was like off of all these fibers and like DNA and blood traces. And then it's like but to that same point, you might say, well, why the hell would you come to your own house or one of your properties and leave like if it was like bloody clothes he was taking out? Because yeah, like if there's a body with a wristwatch on it, that sounds like they didn't do that much body destruction. I mean, because like when people think of like blood in the bathroom, you think of like I don't know, The Sopranos or something, or a mob movie where they take a body into the bathroom and they kind of deconstruct that body because blood goes down the drain into the sewage. Like presumably, it's a way to get rid of a lot of the body fluids and things, and do a messy job in a place where you can then like wash it down and bleach it pretty easily. It's easier than doing it like in your living room, right? And in other
Yeah.
movies you'll watch, in other movies, people that are organized will actually lay down like plastic like drop sheets and things like that because stuff that they can destroy later because or like the Irishman which about killing Jimmy Hoffa, that's what they said happened. So okay, but I think maybe just they weren't smart about it. I think they panicked. I think they felt like they had this ticking clock and they're like, well, where's this hole in the ground we can stick her? And then maybe I mean, there wasn't GPS yet for really anybody. There wasn't. Most people didn't even have a cell phone at that point in '96. So it wasn't like they were going to get traced from that. But yeah, I mean,
But it's
it
retarded.
is.
It's completely. It doesn't
It's
make any sense.
stupid.
Like
Yeah,
you have big trucks. Like they owned multiple trucks, and the
yeah.
desert is literally right there. You know what I mean?
So the only thing I can think of is they maybe had a bigger plan that maybe they eventually carried out, since they haven't apparently actually found the body. All they found are sort of these traces, and
Hmm.
it may be that they did a good enough. And I don't mean like they did a good job, like in like a positive way. They did a job that was adequate enough to
Right. Well,
foil. Yeah.
yeah, I understand your sentiment, but I want to bring it back to another question to you immediately. What do you make of Paul Flores stating to the investigators during one of his questioning, I guess, situations where he was getting questioned, that he had to leave early because he has to help out lay concrete at his mother's house? To like police guys, he says this.
Well, supposedly he even joked to a friend when his friend asked after this whole thing was going on, like, "Oh, well, where's Kristen?" And he goes, "Oh, she's at home with my mom."
Yes.
Whoa, what? Like, I mean, I think these are stupid people. I mean, I don't think, like I said, I mean, I mean, are we really surprised? Look at the way he's acted up until this point and after this. So his
Okay.
whole life has been this sort of like train wreck of a social, just, like, I, I could go off in so many directions about how sometimes you almost makes you wonder, like, if some people are like better adapted for like a different way of
Yeah.
life. Like maybe in the caveman days, this guy would have been golden. Like maybe back in the caveman days when nobody had any rights and you just need someone to kill the saber-toothed tiger, and kill the bear, and then and then you really didn't have any kind of expectations for anything else in your life.
Yeah.
Maybe this guy has some like basic operating system that does not work around like other groups of people bigger than his
Exactly.
family unit. I don't know, but I
Yeah.
guess just to kind of finish it off. So yeah, I mean, here's the thing: the cops. This wasn't like no one ever thought of this. That oh, maybe he buried because there were all these kind of, like you said, these disturbing allegations and coincidences. Wink, wink. That when the cops finally got around to investigating them, which was unfortunately outside of the window where someone could actually do something. I mean, Dr. Grande kind of mentioned, like, a lot of cases, it seemed like he just it wasn't like Paul did anything that spectacular, other than sort of took advantage of the incompetence of the investigation and kind of just kept his mouth shut as much as he did, even though he didn't always keep his mouth shut, and lived his sort of train wreck of a life. And the cops kind of fumbled this thing away.
The earring. We still have to talk about the earrings,
Yeah, yeah,
man.
yeah. That's definitely.
So yeah, so basically,
Go for it.
basically the woman that was living with the husband, the people that were renting out this house from Susan Flores, they one time apparently she was parking her white Acura vehicle. I would assume down this driveway towards the little garage, and she notices something like shiny on the floor, and she picks it up, and apparently she believed it was an earring. We have a picture. This is the woman. This is the exact woman who was renting out the place. Her name is Mary. She was, as I've said, living back then with her husband, and now she's holding a little earring type of jewel that she actually bought from a store. Because let's remember that the initial earring that they found, and they strongly believed that could be potentially connected to Kristin Smart, and they gave that earring to the investigators, to the detectives. The police lost that earring, and you know what, they didn't lose the earring itself. The investigation, they also took a picture of that earring, but guess what, they lost the picture as well. So literally they take a picture of it, and they lost literally everything. And now this woman actually goes to the store, and this picture is taken by Chris Lampert. It's this picture you can find on Chris Lampert's website of his podcast, Your Own Backyard Podcast.com, I believe. And you could see this picture. And now Mary actually bought this at a mall just days before the arranged meeting with Chris Lampert and said that this looks almost identical to what I saw back in the late 90s when I did find it. And now, you know what's interesting? That she believes that it's literally the same piece of jewelry, not necessarily an earring, but from the billboards, because these pictures of Kristin Smart was actually on billboards all over, the local area. And as you can see, she's wearing a necklace, and we have a few pictures here. We have a picture up close, and then we have another one. I think this one is the best one for us, because let's just quickly pay attention to the necklace, right? And I can even zoom this in a little bit. Let's just quickly pay attention to the necklace. And now Mary says that it looked literally identical to this thing. We could just, I guess, maybe zoom in here as well a little bit, so we see. Obviously it wasn't like this exactly, but let's look at this. Okay, I don't know, man. Let's zoom in. Do you think that this looks connected? You know what I mean? Like, let's imagine
Yeah.
this is vaguely similar to what you actually saw like 20 years ago. I don't know, man. So
Yeah.
what? So the Flores is like, they did the worst cover up like job that they could ever do, like to hide the body, but then the police did, and the police outdid them with their failures. You know what I
like
mean?
like it was a contest to see who could be stupider. Yeah, I mean, like they lose the earring, they lose the picture, they didn't. Oh, by the way, those injuries we talked about, those injuries that looked like he had fought off somebody he was trying to rape, maybe, or
Yeah.
somebody, there's this scratches all over him and a black eye that he definitely didn't get playing basketball, and that he tried to blame on, oh, I bumped my face on my truck when I was adjusting my stereo. Whatever, which he admitted he lied basically the first time.
Yeah.
Um, they didn't get pictures of that. So, we showed up like that, but they didn't say, oh, let's take a little picture, by the way, since you're here. Oh, no, no, they can't be bothered to do that. By the way, that earring or necklace piece, whatever it is, which looks definitely like her style of jewelry, just from what we can see in the picture. Oh, where did she find it? She found it where the metal bin used to be in the
Oh
yard.
my, and
So,
apparently it had blood on it as well.
yeah, yeah. So it's like, come on, man. It's so these are already like these things that pile up, and I think this was the thing that was frustrating about the case for so long. So, and then you go and you I guess I don't know. Do you think we're done? I mean they had at some point come by this yard and other properties and done some searches and um done some radar stuff, done some digging, but they never really at that point found anything until just this past year. and
Yeah.
and then again now, where it was something that they could actually, like, I guess, scientifically, well, we'll see, right? So that's the thing that's important to note is, if it sounds like we're hemming and hawing about the exact evidence, it's because nobody knows. It's because the judge has actually put 6 days ago, so after the arrests were made and the announcements were made, the judge put a gag order on the case. So now neither the defense nor the prosecution can talk to the press about the specific points of the case
Yeah.
and tell us, what the actual evidence is. It's all
Ex-
sealed.
exactly. That's the thing. Apparently, everyone, like, Susan is not arrested, right? So the mother is not arrested. So I found that pretty interesting, that they had not linked the mother to the disappearance uh,
Yeah.
of Kristen
So
Smart, but it's proposed that she was buried at the same house where the mother was like staying, for say. So it's like, I don't know.
yeah. So is that maybe a good time? I said, someone watching the episode might get frustrated that we didn't exhaustively go over this, but I think sometimes I worry that we spend so much time on the nuts and bolts of a specific thing that we miss the broad strokes, or we don't, like we've gone really long in some of the episodes, which sometimes people really like, but I know other times, like you and I are like, gosh, there was this other thing we wanted to talk about, and we hit the buzzer at some point, and we can get to it. So there was this interview that
Yes.
was from not even a month ago. So this was the thing actually when I was doing the research on my side for my little spiel on this, and I found this interview, and apparently, so this what happened was I think it had been triggered by a fresh round of warrants and searches, and
It's of the mother.
yeah, for the mother, with the mother, yeah, because for the whole family, these searches were nothing new. Like I said, when you and I had done our original show, it's because they had just served a bunch of warrants over in San Pedro, which is actually down near me, so way far away. It's like
Yeah.
it's in the kind of the western edge of Los Angeles. Interesting area, by the way. I'll just say San Pedro is like not an affluent area, but it's a very interesting area. It's both high crime, but also very historic. It's one of the oldest parts of Los Angeles. But I would say, there's probably some budget housing out there. But it's also like it's a really neat place to visit. Like it's right by the port of LA, which is the um, biggest port in North America. So anyway, um, and it's where most of our container traffic for the United States comes in, something like 70%. Okay,
Mm.
so this interview with his mother, I have some notes. If you don't mind, I'll
Yeah, yeah,
just kind
yeah.
of
Of
quickly
course, of
review
course.
it. And by the way, do you see what's behind her? There's like a stairway and like a deck, and I can't confirm that that's the exact deck, but I think it may be, because I don't know that there's in a lot of other places, like you said. And you and I were trying to kind of triangulate where it was. It looks more likely, right? I mean, it looks like if it's not the deck, it looks like it might be at least adjacent to it. And
Yes.
it's not in great shape, right? I mean, there's like paint's peeling and stuff. It looks kind of rickety. The wood looks like it was from the 90s, or earlier. It doesn't really look brand new. But I will say, just having done a lot of do-it-yourself stuff lately, the wall behind her looks pretty good, and the windows and stuff looks like maybe that's been renovated. But yeah, I can't, for some reason, I don't really see them ordinarily rushing to put a double layer of concrete in their yard. I don't
Yeah,
notice
like
that. Yeah,
that's
that's,
suspicious.
it's, that doesn't seem weird, but like when's the last time that yard had concrete? But maybe it's been dug up so many times that they don't do it anymore. Okay, so the notes I have about her was her interview was, it depends like how you feel. If you feel that the family's innocent, then you can say, well, this is someone that's feeling a lot of stress and frustration, and that would come out of it. She definitely seemed frustrated. She kind of tried to alternate between being, let's say, sympathetic to the Smart family, to kind of somewhat trying to vilify them or say that they had made her family's life more difficult, or that the Smart family's efforts and her supporters, there was one supporter apparently has been a very passionate person, not related at all to her family, just a random person that got involved, like the podcaster guy, but more so about like, I mean, you can find like web pages and stuff from this guy where he's kind of crapping all over Paul Flores, like in like the San Pedro newsletter. This guy made a posting. There's other pages that sort of profile it. There's some debate about whether his actions have been like harassment. Apparently, have the Flores family has opened up some kind of court cases against this guy under the
Yeah.
auspices that he's harassed them. And like I said, that's why I put that disclaimer. I do not want anybody showing up in their front yard, or calling them or doxing them or anything like that. Like, don't we're long past this. You don't need to do that. Nobody needs to do that, and we would not advocate that, nor will we be supportive of anybody's efforts to do that. It's not it's not what needs to happen here. So her interview, like my notes here I said in my notes that, a, she sounded a little bit drunk, or if not drunk, then like I know my wife, when she listened to it, she definitely agreed with me that she sounded a little bit off, like her timing of her words, or like a little bit, like when you're talking to someone who's like under the influence of something, and they're just a little bit slower,
Yeah.
and the words are a little, so not drunk. Then maybe like my wife thought maybe this lady had taken a Xanax based on some other person that she knows, who tells her that this person that my wife knows will tell her that, like, oh, I've taken a Xanax, and then you're like, oh yeah, we can kind of hear it a little bit, So I mean, she doesn't. I'm not saying she's out of it, but
Yeah.
it makes you wonder if she would have had this conversation had she been in a different frame of mind, and maybe it's from the stress of having her house searched and all the attention. To be fair, but she was alternately defensive and accusatory in this interview. There were a lot of excuses and kind of attempts to misdirect and kind of like, well, if this was true, then what about this? And, well, no one's ever found it. It was interesting because I think a psychologist would look at this, and I'm not a psychologist, but often when I've heard things like this, like Dr. Grande or other people, they'll kind of point at certain kinds of statements and say, well, that's not really someone saying they're innocent. It's kind of like someone saying there's no evidence that they're guilty, which like
Right.
isn't the same thing, right? Okay, so there was that going on, but like I said, the thing that was the most striking to me comes at the very, like, no joke, the last 2 minutes of this interview, after she gives this big long, and I mean, I'll say she was pretty patient with the reporters who were interviewing her, but right at the end, this reporter slips in something
We could play it
where,
actually.
yeah, do it. I think it's
You
around.
wanna?
What did I say? It was like right around, let's say, 28 minutes 10 seconds.
Okay, so I'm just gonna
Yeah,
play it for everyone. Okay, so let's listen
yeah.
in. Let's listen in.
My family, his mother is gone. They used to go and harass her at 80 some years old. To make it all gone, to be able to come up with a resolution, come up with the answer, to make it never have happened. But we have to realize that, you can't. It's here. It's happened. She's missing. I know she was declared dead, but she's a missing person that never got back. It's sad, terribly sad. But none of us can change what has happened after the events that have taken place in 25 years. We can't do it. I don't know.
Anything you would do differently?
My hands were tied.
What do you mean by that?
I didn't have any control over what. We haven't done anything. I don't have control what other people do. I don't have control what law enforcement does. I don't have control with people that harass and stalk and do things to us and negative things, and Facebook, like to do away with Facebook. I don't have any control over that. I don't have any control what other people do. None. Zero. I've lived my life, and that's it. You just go on day to day, and I can't let it bother me to the point that I can't exist.
Well, I know that you said that you were writing a book. Can you tell me what you're writing about?
I'm working on it. I'm putting it all together.
Is it just about being the subject of this investigation?
Oh no, there's a lot of things. A lot of things that life teaches. But yeah, I will. I will put it together. And I'm just not really sure, like, of all the aspects. I don't know. There's no finale, I'd like to say tomorrow this would be over, and there would be an answer, and then you would talk about how 25 years went, and then it was gone,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
So I don't know. I
I
feel
don't know
like
where it's.
Yeah,
I'll
but
just break in here. So yeah, did she? I guess here's a specific quote from that, because yeah, oh, by the way, I think she also, her tone by the end of that, I'm not super convinced. I mean, it didn't end well, where she's like, oh, this isn't crazy upsetting, this is just another day, and I don't know. Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't
yeah,
know, lady. It sounds like it sounds like your son might be a monster, but, and maybe your ex-husband too. But okay, so here's the specific quote. The reporter asked her, "Is there anything you would have done differently?" And she kind of like slips that in real suddenly, and I think she kind of catches her unaware. And she goes, "Oh well, my hands were tied." It's like,
Yes,
what do you mean by that?
that's exactly what I
Yeah.
thought was so suspicious as well. Like, what does she mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, because let me project. Let me just give an opinion. Like I said, it's just my opinion, but it almost sounds like, oh well, Paul and Ruben, they were going to do whatever they were going to do. They didn't ask me, or I couldn't get them to not do it, or you know what I mean? It sounds like, oh, that's not my fault. Like that's it. Kind of sounds like you're saying somebody did something that was somebody's fault, and maybe you knew who it was. I mean, so the one thing I think I'll stop going hard on this scene and kind of take a rest for a second after this. But what I couldn't help but think about was there was a famous case here in the U.S. a few years ago about a guy named Jerry Sandusky, and he did some horrible things to some little kids. And the interesting thing was his wife. Well, Susan kind of reminds me of his wife because his wife was like testifying, well, I didn't really know what he was doing down in there in the basement when those kids, when they were yelling and screaming, supposedly they were just wrestling and, he was tickling them or whatever. And then like later on in the court, in the case, like the witnesses are like, Mrs. Sandusky, you knew what was going on. What did you think was, it was like, I mean, obviously they were super mad. I'm not making fun of them. I'm saying like, I'm on their side. Like they were like, yeah, this kind of like, oh, I have my blinders up. I never saw anything. I don't know what's going on. It's like, yeah, no, you kind of know what's going on. Like at this point, lady, Susan Flores, you kind of know. You kind of know, like, like you know what kind of person your son is. You know what kind of person your husband or ex-husband is. You kind of know, like, what kind of jerk off creepo stuff they've been doing for a long time, and then given that like this guy's life has been, by the way, it's not like nothing ever came up again. It turns out now, while he's never been officially booked for anything, now stuff's starting to come out of the woodwork, which we'll see, like whether that makes it in time for additional charges or a separate case. But yeah, it turns out this guy has like not necessarily been like living like the life of a priest ever since this thing. Who has, you might say, but I can't help but say, like, yeah, like where there's smoke, there's fire, and it seems like there was a lot of friggin' smoke in this guy's life.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, so I don't know. Like, to me, it sounded like she said something, but then she was like flip-flopping, like something about Facebook, something about I can't control what the police was doing. Like, oh, so now you're saying that you could have done a better job investigating the murder yourself? Like, what? Like, what do you mean you had no control? Like, nothing makes any sense. Like when she said I had no control over what was happening, uh, yeah, I like that was a major red flag in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like, what exactly do you mean by what was happening?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I mean, if I were her lawyer, by the way, I would have told her just to STFU and like not, do that interview. That was like not
Maybe
well
she
advised.
was on Xanax, or I don't
Yeah,
know.
something didn't seem right with her case. Like it took me a little while to pick up with it, and obviously, like I'll be more charitable here and say there's health conditions like Parkinson's and stuff like that that can definitely affect the way someone talks, and it's not their fault. So I'll fully admit that, or MS or things like that, and you could be on medications to control that. That might also affect that. So I'll be fair in that point. But yeah, like I said, I'm already like not feeling super charitable towards her family,
Yeah.
and like there's never been any other suspects in
Yes.
this case. Like it's always been this one guy who kind of seems like he had been already acting pretty badly, and then there's all these other suspicious things. The phone call the dad gets in the middle of the night that same night that makes him go ripping out of there. Um, just sort of the lies and the inconsistency and the lack of transparency. And I mean, that was as I was doing a little bit of research before this about ground penetrating radar.
Yes.
Well, it turns out that there are a lot of things with the soil composition that can affect how well it works, and that's not even getting into the differences, the like what almost 30-year now difference in computer technology. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of things, you know,
exactly.
radar can do. Yeah, there's a lot of imaging and stuff. The computers are so much massively more powerful now that there's a lot more processing and interpretation you can do, because they said that there's a lot of, one of the big problems is that it takes a lot of skill to interpret the results of the radar. And just think in an era before you had AI in that machinery, where it was, you know, you need to have even more skill than probably you need now.
Right.
Well, does it seem like that police department's been super skilled in their investigatory habits so far? I mean, you know, like, who did they even hire to do that?
Exactly.
um yeah, so
Just
there's yeah.
yeah, there's a lot. I guess since we're gonna be concluding, unless you have anything to add, like I think we need to address one last thing here is the most recent developments, and since I'm not really that well versed in the legality of proceedings in the states per se. What do you think is next? Now, the father, to my understanding, as you've said, is freed, and Paul is in jail. Since you've made a really good prediction on episode 27, for everyone who wants to listen to the prediction Glenn made back then, it was on episode 27. So I guess it's time for another prediction, man. How do you see things playing out in the future? Because literally, I'm right now on my other screen. I'm on Twitter, and like we have information like 20 minutes ago. So what do you think is gonna happen next?
Wow. Well, you know what? Yay me! I didn't even realize. Like, I couldn't remember what I predicted on the episode because it's been so long ago now. We've done so much content since then. But you know, I guess that was just based on you know, what the FBI was saying, what the family was saying. So, I mean, based on what the prosecutors are saying, because there's a press conference you can go look at before the case got locked down. That was with like the sheriff. I think it was the sheriff's department and the DA, and they all had the kind of their separate and joint press conferences. They basically say that they have DNA evidence from, well, it's still vague, but DNA evidence that, even though they don't have the body, points to her body at some point having been on one or more of the properties
Jesus Christ! So they were moving her around.
or something. Yeah, I mean, it was at least buried in one place. Yes, they at least moved her around, you know, twice, right? So once from the college, and then once from the initial burying spot. And whether there was, like, you know, another place that she was installed, that's a good question. I mean, it does make you wonder, you know, if that's what, you know, what exactly they're going to say, what they're going to
Yeah.
allege. But yeah, I mean, I would say that they're going to have the case, and that um just looking at how those things usually go, I think he's going to be found guilty. He's not like, there's not anything sympathetic about him that might sway a jury, like in I don't know, the Robert Blake case, where, you know, the victim in the Robert Blake case was such a kind of a horrible human being that it kind of actually did work in his favor. I'll also say, in a way, this is kind of interesting. I don't know if you know this. In the OJ trial, there was a detective named Mark Furman, and his name became infamous,
Yeah.
um, because basically there was some evidence that came up that pointed to him being potentially like racist, and then the theory was that he somehow like manipulated evidence to make OJ look guilty. And I don't know that really that thing extended that far to being true, but it was enough to help with the reasonable doubt and convince, let's face it, which was a very stupid and prejudiced jury in that case.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. But what was interesting is that guy actually had a second chance at life, where he dug up an old case. I think it was the Michael Skakel case. It was someone related to the Kennedys, like a Kennedy cousin, basically. And that guy had done an old case like this, where like somebody had, like, I think she disappeared or been murdered, and it was just kind of covered up because he was like, it was like, once again, a mixture of incompetence and it happening to a really influential family, and like this, it had kind of gone away. And his efforts in writing this book, in the second try at a career, helped bring a case back, just like this case, with almost the same kind of time difference between it, like a 20 something year gap in time, and got a conviction. That guy's, I think, in jail now.
Oh, I
that
see.
Skakel guy. So I always think about that. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know that we're going to cover that case, but it is interesting to see how, like, this is also, by the way, the ongoing theme of our show sometimes is about these cold cases that are increasingly being solved because of improvements in DNA technology, and frankly just making the effort, because a lot of
Yeah.
times there was just too much evidence and it never got processed, and now they are, the combination of things is like helping bring justice to families.
I
So yeah,
see.
very very exciting case to watch.
Yeah, definitely. We will be keeping an eye out, and definitely, this, if something new happens, we should definitely report on it once more. Yeah, for me, I just really hope that if he gets charged, that he does end up, maybe telling what happened, or maybe we get the actual picture. Allegedly, if he did kill Kristin Smart, that he does end up telling us what happened, and maybe, we will know some more details. Maybe they will give him like a plea deal or something, like give us some more information, and then you'll get the less harsh sentence, and maybe that's how we will, all find out what actually happened to Kristin. Maybe that's on the cards finally after so many years. So thank you guys once more for listening to this podcast. As I've said, please leave a like if you enjoyed this episode, since the algorithm really likes to see likes. It shows, for YouTube, that it's people enjoyed this episode. And please do leave your comments about this case. What do you think happened, and do you see any other interesting points that we may have not discussed, or maybe you want to react to some things that we've said? As always, really enjoyed this episode. Yeah, guys, we'll see you next week, and for now, just stay safe and peace out.